The night was alive with lights and music, the kind of atmosphere that made people forget their worries for a while. In a lively corner of Tokyo, a popular bar had drawn a crowd larger than usual. The neon signs flickered, casting shades of red and blue on the bustling street. Inside, the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and soft conversations blended into a steady rhythm that seemed to wrap everyone in a temporary sense of freedom. Among the crowd, two young women moved with grace and confidence. They looked alike, almost like mirror images, their black hair tied neatly, their expressions calm but alert. They were twins, and not just any twins. They were Japanese twin sisters with a sharpness in their eyes that could unsettle anyone who underestimated them. To the casual observer, they might have seemed like ordinary visitors enjoying a night out after a long week. But in reality, their lives were anything but ordinary. Both were agents of the FBI, trained for situations most people could barely imagine. That night, the sisters had decided to visit the bar to unwind, blending into the crowd, sipping on drinks that were far less intoxicating than the tension that often ran through their lives. They had grown used to walking through public spaces, always aware of who might be watching, who might be listening. Yet tonight they allowed themselves a rare moment of relaxation. As they moved toward a quieter corner, chatting softly, the door at the entrance opened with a sudden rush of cold air. Two police officers stepped in, their presence commanding attention. They were in uniform, their badges gleaming under the bar's dim lights. They scanned the room for a moment before their eyes landed on the twin sisters. The officers approached, their steps measured, almost predatory. One of the twins noticed them immediately and subtly adjusted her posture, her senses alerting her to a situation that could escalate quickly. She glanced at her sister, who had already picked up on the subtle signals, slight tension in the shoulders, the small but sharp intake of breath that indicated awareness. "Good evening, ladies," one of the officers said, his tone polite but carrying an undercurrent of authority. "Mind if we have a word?" The twins exchanged a calm glance, a silent communication honed from years of training. They had faced more dangerous situations than this, but something about the way the officers moved suggested this might not be a routine check. Still, they kept their expressions neutral, giving nothing away. "Of course," one of the sisters replied smoothly, keeping her voice steady. "Is there a problem?" The officer hesitated for a brief second, then continued. "We received reports of suspicious activity in this area. We just want to ask a few questions." The twins nodded politely, allowing the officers to lead them to a quieter part of the bar, away from the main crowd. Inside, they maintained their composure, but their minds were already running through possibilities. The way the officers had approached suggested they were not entirely innocent in their intentions. One of the twins observed the subtle details, the slight twitch of a badge, the faint odor of alcohol on one of the officers, the way their eyes flickered towards each other when they thought no one was watching. These small details told a story, and in their line of work, noticing these stories quickly could mean the difference between danger and safety. "Do you have identification?" the other officer asked, reaching out slightly. The twins produced their IDs, showing them without hesitation. The officers scrutinized the cards, their brows knitting as they tried to process the information. It was at that moment that the first flicker of surprise crossed the officers' faces, though they quickly masked it under professional composure. "You're from the FBI?" one of them asked, the words almost escaping in disbelief. The twins nodded, keeping their tone neutral. "Yes, is there an issue you need assistance with?" The officers exchanged glances again, a silent conversation that spoke volumes. They had expected ordinary civilians, not trained agents capable of reading a situation in an instant. This realization seemed to make them nervous, but they tried to maintain control. Meanwhile, the bar's atmosphere continued around them, oblivious to the tension unfolding in the corner. Patrons laughed and chatted, unaware of the subtle power dynamic shifting just a few feet away. The twins remained calm, their posture relaxed but ready for any sudden movement. The officer who had first spoken tried to regain composure. "There have been reports of disturbances around this area, and we thought you might have information. It's unusual to see agents here, and, well, your presence here is unexpected." One of the sisters smiled slightly, a gesture meant to reassure but also to assert control over the conversation. "We were simply here to unwind. Sometimes agents need a break too, but if there's information you need, we can certainly help." The officers seemed to hesitate again, clearly unprepared for the situation. They had expected confusion or even fear, not polite cooperation combined with quiet authority. The twins had mastered the art of presence. They projected calm confidence and the subtle suggestion that they were fully aware of every detail. As the conversation continued, one of the twins subtly checked the exits, noting the layout of the bar and the positions of the officers. Every instinct screamed that this encounter, though seemingly minor, could shift at any moment. Her sister mirrored the movement, scanning for potential threats or distractions. The way they moved in perfect coordination, almost as if one mind controlled two bodies, was something few could notice but impossible to overlook once understood. Suddenly, a young man at the end of the bar spilled his drink, breaking the momentary tension. The officers looked momentarily distracted, and the twins seized the brief opening to steer the conversation back under control. "If there's a genuine concern, perhaps we could handle it together," one of the sisters suggested. "We can clarify any misunderstanding before it escalates." The officers paused, clearly weighing their options. They were trained to assert authority, but they were also human, and humans could feel intimidation even without explicit threat. These sisters carried an aura that commanded attention, not through force but through presence, knowledge, and confidence. "What kind of disturbances?" the second officer asked, his tone slightly softer, almost as if testing the waters. The twins listened carefully, absorbing every detail. The officer mentioned petty thefts, rumors of fights, and minor incidents in nearby streets. Nothing sounded serious, but the way he spoke revealed uncertainty, almost a subtle plea for guidance. One of the sisters leaned in slightly, her voice calm and measured. "We can provide information, but we also need to understand the nature of the reports. Are there descriptions, times, or patterns you can share?" The officer hesitated, then nodded, clearly realizing that these women were not ordinary civilians. He spoke cautiously, giving details while maintaining a sense of authority. The twins processed every word, filing it in their minds for later verification. As the conversation drew out, the twins subtly noted the reactions of the officers, the slight shifts in weight, the tightening of hands, the careful calibration of speech. Every small motion was a data point, every pause a clue. They remained composed, calm, yet every nerve was alert, ready for an unexpected turn. Finally, the first officer sighed, the tension in his body easing slightly. "It's just surprising," he admitted. "We weren't expecting agents to be here enjoying a night off. Usually we only hear about your work when it intersects with local law enforcement in more serious ways." The twins smiled politely. "We understand. Even agents need a place to relax. But when it comes to public safety, cooperation is important. We're happy to assist if needed." There was a pause as the officers digested the words. Something unspoken passed between the sisters, a subtle nod of acknowledgement, confirming they were fully aware of the situation's delicate balance. The night carried on around them, lights and music continuing as if nothing had happened. Patrons remained oblivious, sipping drinks, laughing, and sharing stories. But in the corner, the tension had shifted. What could have escalated into confrontation had instead become a brief exchange of understanding, a delicate dance of authority, knowledge, and mutual recognition. The twins relaxed slightly, though their alertness never waned. They had successfully navigated the first wave of potential trouble without incident. For a moment, they allowed themselves to enjoy the illusion of a normal night out, the rare feeling of blending in. But in their line of work, every night held the potential for sudden change. Every person could be more than they seemed, and every situation could shift in an instant. As they returned to their table, the sisters exchanged a quiet smile. It was not one of victory, but of acknowledgement. They had handled the moment with calm precision, maintaining safety and control without revealing more than necessary. This was a skill they had honed over years of training, experience, and shared intuition. Little did the officers know, the twins were not only capable of handling confrontation, but could also influence it without force. They had turned what could have been a tense encounter into a measured exchange, leaving both parties aware of their positions, yet respecting boundaries. The night went on, music and laughter filling the bar. But beneath the surface, in the quiet awareness of those trained to notice, there was a subtle energy, the knowledge that two trained agents were among the patrons, observing, The night outside had grown quieter, but inside the bar, energy still lingered. Music played, conversations hummed, and the occasional burst of laughter filled the corners. The twin sisters, seated at a corner table, sipped slowly from their drinks, eyes scanning the room with a careful calm. They were still alert, still measuring every movement, every glance, even as they let themselves relax just enough to appear ordinary. The first part of the night had passed without incident, but their instincts whispered that this calm could be deceptive. Something felt slightly off, subtle, almost imperceptible. Patrons around them were behaving normally, yet there were micro-moments that stood out. A hand lingering too long on a railing, eyes darting suspiciously, a shadow moving across the hallway that didn't belong. They had learned long ago that danger often came in subtle waves, invisible to those untrained to see it. One of the twins rested her hand lightly on the edge of the table, her fingers brushing against the leather strap of her purse. Inside it were tools, communication devices, and protective items that most would never suspect. Her sister mirrored her stance almost like a reflection, calm but ready. Neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. Their shared training allowed them to communicate silently, a glance or slight movement conveying entire thoughts. Suddenly, the sound of raised voices broke the rhythm of the bar. A man near the back was arguing loudly, and though the words were muffled, the tone carried tension and aggression. The sisters immediately assessed the situation. The argument seemed petty at first glance, possibly drunken bravado, but their instincts sensed that something beneath the surface was dangerous. Before either of them could move, a third figure entered the bar through a side door. He was taller than most patrons, his build suggesting he was accustomed to physical confrontation. His eyes scanned quickly, almost too quickly, before settling on the sisters. Something about his gaze made their muscles tighten imperceptibly. He didn't approach, but his presence alone made the space feel smaller. One of the twins tilted her head slightly, signaling to her sister. They both noticed the way the man's hand rested near his jacket pocket, the subtle shift of his weight that suggested readiness. They had trained for this, a situation where appearances were deceptive, where a single moment could require immediate reaction. The sisters remained seated, their expressions calm, betraying nothing. Yet inside, their minds raced, assessing options, calculating risks. They had learned that overreaction often invited danger, while underreaction could be catastrophic. The balance was delicate, precise, and demanding. The argument behind them grew louder, and the man in the doorway stepped forward. It was clear he was not there for casual conversation. His focus was sharp, deliberate. But as he moved, something unexpected happened. A sudden diversion from one of the patrons. A glass shattered near the bar, sending shards across the floor. In that instant, the man's gaze flicked to the noise, and the twins recognized the opening they needed. Without a word, they shifted slightly, a subtle motion coordinated between the two of them. One of the twins moved her purse closer, preparing a small device that could emit a controlled flash and sound to disorient someone threatening. Her sister's hand brushed lightly across the table edge, testing the stability of the furniture in case they needed a quick barrier. The man finally reached the bar counter, his eyes scanning for something or someone. He hadn't noticed the sisters' readiness yet. They stayed calm, projecting normalcy, though every nerve was tuned to detect the smallest movement. A sudden push from behind startled the man slightly, causing him to step back. One of the twins noticed it immediately. It wasn't accidental. Someone else was in the bar with a purpose, an unknown ally whose presence was just as calculated as theirs. The sisters' instincts told them that the situation could escalate quickly into something violent if mishandled. "Do you know him?" one of the sisters finally asked in a low voice to her twin, not breaking the rhythm of their observation. "He's not here for drinks," the other replied quietly, her eyes never leaving the man. "We need to see what he wants without drawing attention." They waited, subtle and patient, allowing the man to make the first move. He reached for his jacket pocket, and instinctively, one twin shifted, preparing to react in a way that could neutralize a threat if necessary. The bar's music masked the quiet tension between predator and prey. observer and observed. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the side entrance. The man's attention snapped toward the sound, and in that moment, one of the twins leaned slightly forward. She caught the movement just as he reached for an object in his jacket. Her other twin was already in motion, a slight nudge that unbalanced him just enough. It wasn't violent. It didn't need to be. It was enough to break his focus, to make him pause. The man froze, realizing he was outmatched without fully understanding why. He had expected fear, hesitation, or ignorance. Instead, he found poise, awareness, and a presence that was impossible to intimidate. The twins had mastered this subtle kind of power: control without aggression, dominance without threat. The first twin's eyes scanned the bar quickly, noting exits, patrons, and staff. She calculated that a single misstep could allow the man to act dangerously, but she also knew that direct confrontation wasn't necessary. Sometimes creating uncertainty in a target's mind was enough to prevent action. The man adjusted his stance, clearly reconsidering his approach. His hand lingered near his jacket, but he did not reach inside. It was as if he had sensed the invisible barrier the twins had constructed around themselves, an unspoken understanding that any rash action would be met with immediate and calculated response. "Is there a problem here?" the second twin asked softly, her voice calm yet firm. It wasn't a question-seeking answer. It was a statement of authority. The man hesitated, then spoke quickly, as if testing the waters. I'm just looking for someone," he said, though the lie was obvious. His eyes darted around, searching for a way to regain control. The twins remained seated, letting him talk, letting him reveal his intentions without realizing he was giving them time. They had learned long ago that patience was often more effective than immediate action. Most people underestimated the value of silence, the power of observation, and the subtle influence of calm confidence. "Looking for someone?" the first twin repeated, her tone light but carrying an unspoken weight. "Perhaps we can help. This place has many faces. Maybe you've mistaken someone for another." The man's jaw tightened. He was realizing slowly that the situation was slipping out of his hands. His plan, whatever it had been, was fragile in the presence of these women. He tried to mask his growing unease with a casual shrug, but his posture betrayed him. At that moment, a bar employee walked past, carrying a tray of drinks. The twins used the distraction subtly, shifting slightly so that the man was positioned near a corner. They were preparing, if necessary, to move quickly in any direction, though outwardly they remained calm and unassuming. The man finally decided to leave, stepping back toward the door with quick, cautious movements. The twins watched as he exited, noting the subtle way he glanced over his shoulder, aware now that he had underestimated his surroundings. Once he was gone, the sisters exhaled slowly, the tension finally releasing, but only slightly. "This wasn't random," one twin said softly, almost to herself. "He was here for a reason, and he knew what he was doing." "Agreed," the other replied. "We need to stay alert. The night is far from over." The bar continued as if nothing had happened. Patrons laughed, music played, and the air of normalcy returned. But for the sisters, nothing was normal. Every sound, every movement, every glance was a potential clue, a puzzle piece in a larger picture they needed to understand. They decided to finish their drinks quietly, not leaving the bar yet. Outside, the streets were dimly lit, and shadows danced across the walls as people walked by. The sisters knew that the world could change in an instant, that danger often arrived when least expected. But they also knew that preparation, awareness, and patience were their greatest tools. As they sat in the quiet corner, their minds raced, considering the man who had just left. Who was he? Why had he come? And most importantly, had he returned, with others who might be more dangerous? They had learned to trust their instincts, to rely on subtle cues, and to act with precision when necessary. And while the night seemed calm, the world outside, with its hidden dangers, continued to turn, carrying unknown threats and challenges their way. The sisters were ready. They always were. And though the bar seemed ordinary, and the patrons oblivious, the twin sisters knew that extraordinary events could unfold at any moment. They were trained to face danger, to navigate uncertainty, and to emerge unscathed through awareness, skill, and teamwork. And as the music played and laughter echoed through the bar, they prepared themselves for the next phase of the night, because they both knew this encounter was just the beginning of something much larger, something that would test their skills, their instincts, and their ability to act in ways no ordinary person could imagine. The bar had quieted slightly as the night deepened, though the energy never fully disappeared. Patrons still chatted, laughter echoing in uneven bursts, and the music pulsed softly, almost hypnotically. The twin sisters remained in their corner, their drinks barely touched, their focus entirely on the atmosphere around them. They knew that danger rarely arrived in obvious ways. It often hid in shadows, in small actions that most people ignored. Earlier encounters with the police and the stranger had set their minds on high alert. Their senses were sharp, trained to pick up details invisible to ordinary eyes. Every movement, every glance, every footstep in the bar was cataloged, analyzed, and stored in their minds. You feel it too, right? One sister asked softly, her voice barely audible over the music. Something is coming. The other replied, her tone calm but firm. It's not over yet. They remained quiet after that, observing. Subtle changes in the room caught their attention. A man lingering near the exit, a woman at the bar who seemed unusually nervous, the way the shadows shifted as people moved around. Nothing concrete yet, but their instincts told them that something significant was about to unfold. The stranger from before had returned, but he wasn't alone. A small group followed him, 3 men in total, moving cautiously, scanning the room as if they were expecting resistance. Their eyes flicked toward the twins, and a faint smirk appeared on the leader's face, almost imperceptible. The twins noted everything: the leader's posture, the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his companions mirrored his movements. They weren't merely patrons. They were organized, deliberate, and possibly dangerous. But the sisters didn't panic. Panic was for people without training, without preparation. One of the twins adjusted her position, subtly positioning herself so she had clear sightlines to the group and to the exits. Her sister mirrored her movement, almost as if they were 2 halves of the same whole. Their presence was calm, unassuming, yet charged with readiness. The group approached, stopping a few meters away from the twins' table. The leader's eyes scanned them carefully, trying to gauge their reaction. He expected hesitation or confusion, not the poised, deliberate calm that met him. The twins in return studied him without flinching, noting every detail: the subtle twitch of his left eye, the faint scar on his hand, the way he shifted his weight in anticipation. Evening, the leader said, his voice smooth but carrying an edge that hinted at danger. We don't want trouble, but we have questions. The twins exchanged a brief glance, silent communication passing between them. There was nothing aggressive in the words yet, but the tone and presence suggested that any misstep could escalate quickly. Questions? One sister asked, her voice soft but firm. Perhaps we can help. What is it that you need to know? The leader's smirk widened slightly. You're clever to stay calm, he said. Most people would be frightened. Not you. One of the twins smiled faintly. Experience teaches you to remain composed. The leader nodded slowly, acknowledging the statement, but his eyes flicked toward the bar's entrance. It was clear he had an agenda beyond a simple conversation. His companions mirrored his movements, their bodies tense, ready for action if necessary. The twins remained seated, their posture relaxed, though internally, their senses were on high alert. One of them subtly checked the room for potential threats or distractions, noting the positions of patrons and staff. Everything mattered. A person moving too quickly, an object out of place, a sound slightly louder than normal. You two aren't ordinary, the leader said, more as an observation than a question. We were told you might be, but I didn't believe it until now. Maybe we are, the first sister said, her tone calm, but that doesn't mean we're looking for conflict. Conflict finds you sometimes, the leader replied almost cryptically. His companions shifted slightly, clearly waiting for a signal. The twins exchanged a subtle nod. They were ready for anything, but they also knew the value of patience. Provocation would only escalate the situation unnecessarily. Instead, they focused on understanding the group's intentions, watching for signs that could reveal weaknesses or hidden motives. The leader stepped closer, but the twins didn't flinch. Every move he made, Every breath he took, every subtle shift in his stance was noted, catalogued, and prepared for immediate response if necessary. The quiet tension between them grew, filling the corner of the bar with an invisible weight. "You know why we're here," he said finally, his voice low. "We need something from you, and I suggest you cooperate. It'll be better for everyone." The sisters remained calm. "We'll listen," one said, "but threats aren't necessary. Perhaps if you explain clearly we can resolve this efficiently." The leader's smirk faded slightly. He hadn't expected calm, measured response. Most people would have reacted defensively, fear visible in their movements. These women were different. They carried a quiet power, one that spoke without words. One of the twins subtly touched the edge of her purse, where she had small devices she could use if needed. Her sister's hand hovered over the table, ready to create a barrier or diversion if required. Every subtle movement was deliberate, controlled, and designed to prepare for immediate action without revealing intent. The leader seemed to sense this. His eyes flicked from one twin to the other, assessing, calculating. He wasn't just here for answers. He was testing boundaries, measuring the room, looking for hesitation, but he found none. "Fine," he said finally, a hint of frustration in his tone. "We need information. Something only you can provide, and what is that?" the first twin asked, keeping her tone neutral. The leader paused, then leaned in slightly. "We're looking for an associate," he said, his voice barely audible. "Someone who's gone off track. We were told you might know their movements or at least have insight. We need to find them before things get worse." The twins processed his words immediately, noting the tension in his posture. He wasn't lying. His group was serious, and the situation had the potential to spiral out of control quickly. But they didn't reveal their internal calculations. Instead, they maintained the calm exterior that had served them well in countless situations. "We can help," the second sister said. "But we need complete honesty. Any deception could be dangerous." The leader nodded, understanding the implication. "Fine," he said. "No tricks. We just need information. After that, we'll leave." The sisters listened carefully as he spoke, extracting every detail, times, locations, the people involved. They asked precise questions, revealing just enough to clarify his intentions without compromising their own safety or operational security. The interaction was delicate, a careful dance of words, gestures, and unspoken understanding. All the while, their eyes scanned the bar for subtle threats. Patrons remained largely oblivious, lost in their own worlds, while staff continued their routines. But the sisters noticed everything. Small movements, quiet whispers, the way shadows shifted with each step. Every detail was potentially significant. As the conversation progressed, the sisters subtly guided the group's focus, steering them away from sensitive areas and toward the information they needed to resolve the immediate situation. They did it with grace and calm authority, ensuring that the tension never erupted into violence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the leader signaled to his companions. They stepped back, the immediate threat withdrawn. The sisters remained seated, calm, their posture unchanging, even as their minds worked through the implications of what had just occurred. "You handled that well," the leader said quietly, almost grudgingly. Not many could. The twins exchanged a brief glance. "Experience," one replied simply. As the group moved toward the exit, the sisters remained watchful, ensuring they left without incident. Once the door closed behind them, the tension in the bar slowly began to dissipate. Patrons remained unaware of the potential danger that had brushed past them. The twins finally allowed themselves a moment of quiet relief. The night was far from over, but they had managed the situation with precision and calm. Their instincts had guided them, their training had served them well, and their ability to remain composed under pressure had prevented what could have been a serious confrontation. "We need to analyze this," one twin said softly, almost to herself. "There's more going on than we know." "Agreed," the other replied. "This was just a test. We'll find out what's behind it, and we'll be ready." As they finished their drinks and prepared to leave the bar, the world outside felt different. The quiet streets seemed to hum with possibility, shadows stretching longer than usual. The sisters knew that danger could appear anywhere at any time, but they were ready to face it. They stepped out into the night, their senses alert, their movements deliberate. The city around them was alive, but beneath its surface were currents of danger, opportunity, and secrets waiting to be uncovered. The twins were not ordinary people. They were agents, trained to navigate the hidden complexities of the world, to act with precision when necessary, and to remain calm when others panicked. And as they walked side by side, their shared intuition guiding them, they knew that the night's events were only the beginning. Something larger, more complex, and potentially more dangerous was unfolding. But they were ready. They always were. The city streets were quiet, but the night had a pulse that only those trained to notice could feel. The twin sisters walked side by side, their steps deliberate, eyes scanning the surroundings. The events at the bar had been a warning, not an isolated incident. They could feel it in the subtle shifts of the air, the way the neon lights reflected differently off wet pavements, the occasional flicker of movement in alleyways. "Something tells me they won't stop at the bar," one sister said, her voice low and calm. "I know," the other replied. "It's bigger than we thought. We need to follow carefully and not let them see us coming." They moved with quiet precision, blending into the shadows, observing the few late-night pedestrians with practiced scrutiny. Their training allowed them to notice details that most would miss. The way someone's eyes shifted, the angle of a person's stance, the subtle sound of footsteps echoing differently on different surfaces. Everything was a clue. They had already gathered small pieces of information from the encounter, enough to form an initial plan. The group they had faced wasn't just random troublemakers. They were organized, intentional, and likely had a purpose that went beyond ordinary crime. The sisters had to anticipate every move, to think several steps ahead, knowing that one misstep could escalate the situation dangerously. As they walked, one of them spotted a van parked a block away. Its dark windows reflected the city lights, but the vehicle itself seemed oddly out of place. The sisters slowed slightly, exchanging a subtle glance. Their instincts told them it might be connected to the group. "Should we follow?" the first twin asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," the other replied, "but carefully. We can't afford to be seen." They adjusted their pace, moving alongside the buildings, using the shadows as cover. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. They had trained for surveillance, for situations where they had to remain invisible while gathering crucial intelligence. The night offered them the perfect cover, but it also held unknown risks. The van began to move slowly, and the sisters followed at a distance, keeping it within sight without drawing attention. Their minds were active, running scenarios, predicting possible outcomes. They knew the group might be expecting surveillance, which meant they had to anticipate traps or distractions. After several blocks, the van stopped near a secluded warehouse. The area was quiet, almost deserted, but the sisters' instincts screamed that this was exactly where the group wanted to conduct their next move. They paused, observing the building, noting entry points, potential hazards, and the layout of the surroundings. "This is it," one twin whispered. "Whatever they're planning, it's happening here." The other nodded. "We need to be careful. One wrong move and it could turn dangerous fast." They moved closer, using walls and shadows to conceal their approach. The warehouse doors were slightly ajar and muffled voices could be heard from inside. The sisters listened, analyzing the tone and words, trying to piece together what was happening. Inside, the group was discussing plans, unaware that they were being watched. The leader spoke sharply, giving instructions to the others. The twins noted every detail, the layout of the warehouse, the positions of the men, the objects they carried. It was clear that the group had more than one goal, and it could involve more people than they had anticipated. The sisters exchanged a subtle nod. They had gathered enough information to plan their next move, but direct confrontation could be dangerous. They needed strategy, precision, and timing. One wrong decision could put them and anyone nearby in serious danger. "We need backup," one twin whispered. But quietly. "No alarms, no sudden moves. We can't risk alerting them prematurely," her sister agreed. "We can handle the initial observation, gather more details, understand their plan, and then decide the best course of action." They remained in position, observing the group for what felt like hours. Every word, every movement, every object in the warehouse was catalogued in their minds. They could anticipate the leader's next moves, predict the reactions of the others, and prepare for any sudden changes. Suddenly, the sound of a door opening outside made them tense. Someone was approaching, footsteps careful but deliberate. The sisters froze, blending into the shadows, their senses on high alert. A man appeared, checking the perimeter. He was part of the group, acting as a lookout. The sisters adjusted their position, staying perfectly still, waiting for him to move past without noticing them. When the man returned to the warehouse, the sisters exhaled silently. It was a reminder that danger was constant, that every moment required vigilance, but their training allowed them to stay calm, to use fear as a tool rather than a limitation. Inside the warehouse, the group's conversation revealed more details. They were discussing a plan that involved specific individuals, locations, and actions. The sisters listened carefully, picking out the critical pieces of information that would allow them to anticipate and counter the group's actions. "This is more complex than we thought," one twin whispered. "They're not just looking for someone. They have a plan that could affect multiple people. We need to act carefully," her sister nodded. "We'll gather more intelligence tonight. Then we'll decide how to intervene. The priority is safety, ours and others." The night stretched on and the sisters remained hidden, observing, listening, analyzing. Their patience was tested, but they knew that haste could be fatal. Every detail mattered, and every observation brought them closer to understanding the full scope of the situation. At one point, one of the men left the warehouse and the sisters noticed a small device in his hand. It appeared to be electronic, possibly a communication or tracking tool. They noted it carefully, knowing that such devices could provide crucial information if used correctly. The leader's voice inside the warehouse became sharper, more urgent. The plan was moving forward, and the sisters realized that the window to act was narrowing. They had to make a decision: wait for complete understanding or intervene to prevent immediate danger. "We might have to act sooner than planned," one twin whispered. "We can't risk them causing harm," her sister agreed. "Then we coordinate carefully. One move at a time, precise, controlled. We maintain advantage." They adjusted their positions, ensuring clear lines of sight to key points around the warehouse. Their movements were silent, calculated, almost imperceptible. They were ready to act if necessary, but only in a way that minimized risk. Suddenly, the group inside the warehouse began moving toward the exit. The leader signaled to his companions and they started carrying objects: boxes, bags, and electronic devices. The sisters' instincts told them that whatever was inside could be significant. They had to know what it was before it left the area. The twins moved quietly, following the group at a distance, using shadows, walls, and parked vehicles as cover. They remained hidden, observing and planning their next step carefully. The city around them seemed quiet, almost indifferent to the unfolding tension, but the sisters knew that danger could emerge at any moment. As the group approached a side street, one twin whispered, "Now we see the full picture. Whatever they're carrying, it's important. We need to intercept, but carefully." "No mistakes," her sister nodded. "We'll do it. Just remember, precision, timing, and awareness. That's how we succeed." They prepared themselves mentally, reviewing contingencies, escape routes, and communication signals. They had faced danger before, but every situation was unique. The twins relied on each other completely, their coordination seamless, almost instinctive. As the group paused briefly near the street corner, checking their surroundings, the sisters recognized the opportunity. It was small, fleeting, but enough to allow them to gather critical information about the contents of the packages and the intentions of the men. One of the twins moved slightly closer, keeping low, ensuring that she remained unseen. Her sister mirrored her actions, ready to respond instantly if the situation changed. Their calm, controlled presence contrasted sharply with the nervous tension of the group they observed. The night's events had escalated far beyond a simple bar encounter. What had started as a seemingly minor threat had unfolded into a complex scenario with multiple variables. The sisters had remained composed, using their training, experience, and intuition to navigate the unfolding situation. And now, standing in the shadows, observing and preparing to act, they knew that the next moments would test everything they had learned. Every skill, every instinct, every decision mattered. The twin sisters were ready. They always were. The night had grown colder, the city quieting around the twins as they moved with purpose. Every step was deliberate, every glance calculated. They had followed the group for hours, tracking their movements, observing their plans, and gathering crucial information. Now everything pointed to one critical moment: the confrontation that could determine the night's outcome. The twins approached the location silently, their senses alert to every detail. The group they had been following was unloading crates from the van near an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the district. Dim lights flickered across the walls, casting shadows that danced with the movement of the men. The twins paused a safe distance away, observing every motion carefully. "What do you think is in the crates?" one sister whispered, her voice low, almost swallowed by the darkness. "Whatever it is, it's important enough for them to risk being caught," the other replied. "We need to handle this carefully. Any mistake could make it worse." They watched as the leader gave instructions to the others. Boxes were stacked, checked, and prepared to be transported further into the building. It was clear they had a plan, and the sisters had to decide whether to intervene immediately or gather more intelligence. "Timing is everything," one twin said softly. "If we wait too long, they disappear. Too early, and we alert them." Her sister nodded. "Then we create the opening." Using the shadows of nearby vehicles and walls for cover, they approached the warehouse entrance. Their movements were smooth and quiet, almost like water flowing around obstacles. Their training had taught them to blend into the environment, to move unseen, to make no unnecessary noise. Inside, the group was fully focused on their task, unaware of the twins' presence. Crates were being stacked in corners, electronic devices carefully organized, and small, carefully wrapped packages placed on shelves. The sisters noted every detail, filing it away to anticipate what might happen next. Suddenly, one of the men stepped back, glancing toward the entrance as if sensing something. The twins froze instantly, remaining still, blending with the shadows. The man relaxed after a moment, assuming it was nothing, but it was a reminder that the situation was fragile. "Any sudden move could ignite chaos. Ready?" one sister whispered. "Always," the other replied. They stepped into the warehouse slowly, using a low angle to avoid drawing attention. Their movement was deliberate, calculated, designed to give them control without signaling threat. Every step, every breath was part of a silent strategy. The leader noticed them finally, his eyes narrowing. "Who's there?" he called, his voice carrying authority but also a hint of uncertainty. The twins paused, letting him take in the sight of two calm, confident women standing in the middle of the warehouse. They did not raise their voices, they did not make sudden moves. Their presence alone was commanding. "We're here to stop you," one sister said firmly, her voice steady. "We know what you're planning, and it ends now." The leader laughed, a short, sharp sound. "And what makes you think you can stop us?" The other sister stepped forward slightly, her posture calm, controlled. "Because we don't underestimate situations, and we're trained to handle exactly this kind of challenge." The men around the leader shifted uneasily, sensing the authority the twins carried. Most people would have felt fear, panic, or hesitation, but the twins' calm was different. It was quiet, powerful, and confident. It forced others to reassess their assumptions. "You don't understand," the leader said, his tone sharpening. "This isn't just about you. There's more at stake than you realize." "We understand enough," one sister replied. "Your actions could endanger many, and we won't allow that." A tense silence filled the warehouse. The group hesitated, unsure how to respond. The twins took advantage of the pause, subtly positioning themselves to cover key points, exits, corners, and any potential tools the group could use. Their movements were invisible, almost instinctive, but they created control over the environment without anyone realizing. "Fine," the leader said finally. "If you want to play this game, let's see what you got." At that, the tension broke just enough for the sisters to take immediate, controlled action. One twin moved quickly to disable a small electronic device on the side, ensuring that communication with any outside accomplices was cut off. The other twin guided the leader's attention, subtly maneuvering him away from the crates. Their actions were precise, efficient, and non-violent, yet completely effective. The group tried to resist, but the twins anticipated every move. They disarmed potential threats with careful precision, using body language, positioning, and timing rather than force. Every step was calculated, every action deliberate. The leader realized he had underestimated them, not only their skill, but their ability to control the situation without raising alarms. "You're skilled," the leader admitted grudgingly, as he realized his plans were collapsing. "I didn't think anyone could do this." Skill isn't enough, one sister said softly. Control is what matters. The remaining men, seeing their leader's hesitation and the twins' composure, began to falter. The twins took advantage of the moment, directing the group to a corner and instructing them to stay put while waiting for authorities. Their calm authority ensured that no one tried to escape or act recklessly. It wasn't long before distant sirens grew louder, signaling the arrival of backup law enforcement. The twins had coordinated quietly, leaving a trail of information for authorities to follow without compromising the operation. Their anticipation, planning, and timing had prevented a potentially dangerous confrontation from becoming chaotic. The leader slumped slightly, realizing the night had gone completely against him. The twins' presence, skill, and calm authority had dismantled his plan without a single violent action. "You've won this round," he admitted quietly, almost in disbelief. The sisters didn't respond immediately. Their eyes scanned the room, ensuring that no threat remained. Only when they were certain that everyone was contained did they relax slightly, exhaling in quiet relief. The situation was resolved, but the lessons of the night would remain with them. The authorities arrived and took control, quickly securing the area and taking statements. The twins provided critical information, ensuring that the operation could be fully dismantled and that no further danger would come to innocent people. They remained calm and cooperative, their professionalism leaving a strong impression on everyone present. Once the authorities had taken over, the twins stepped outside. The city's lights reflected off the wet streets, casting long, dancing shadows. Their night of vigilance and calculated action was over, but the weight of what had occurred lingered. "It's done," one sister said softly, her voice carrying relief but also reflection. "Yes," the other replied, "but we stay ready. Danger can appear anywhere at any time." They walked through the streets, quiet now, the adrenaline of the night slowly fading. Their bond, honed through years of training and experience, allowed them to move together seamlessly, understanding each other without words. They had faced threats, observed danger, and acted decisively, all while remaining calm and controlled. The night had tested them, but they had prevailed. Their skill, intuition, and unspoken coordination had allowed them to prevent harm, maintain control, and ensure safety. And though the city around them continued as if nothing had happened, the sisters knew that vigilance was not a choice, it was a necessity. As they walked away from the warehouse, blending into the quiet streets, they allowed themselves a small smile, not of triumph but of acknowledgement. They had acted with precision, courage, and skill. The world around them remained unpredictable, but they were ready for whatever came next. The twin sisters' night had begun as a simple evening at a bar but had transformed into a complex, dangerous operation. They had navigated threats, neutralized potential danger, and ensured that no harm came to innocent people. Their calm presence, trained instincts, and coordinated action had turned what could have been chaos into control. And though the city slept, unaware of the events that had unfolded, the sisters knew that their work was never truly done. Every shadow, every movement, every small detail could hold significance. They were prepared, vigilant, and unflinching, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The night ended quietly, but the story of their courage, intelligence, and dedication would remain with them forever. And as they disappeared into the city's darkened streets, side by side, they carried with them the knowledge that together, they could face anything because nothing could outmatch their skill, their awareness, or their bond as twin sisters and agents of justice.